Welcome to Unit 10. This unit is all about the importance of historical discoveries and the links we can show between the past and present in terms of our culture, tools and lifestyles, and what we can learn about ourselves from the evidence we see today. Listen to people talking about their take on the importance of history in their lives today.
I know quite a lot about the history of the place I grew up. I was raised in a city called York, which is in the north of England, and it was a Roman city with a really rich history, and I guess I was surrounded by that as a child, and it's because of that I became really passionate about history and archaeology and eventually went on to study it at university.
I grew up in a small village in the south of Scotland, which doesn't have an incredibly rich history. However, a local historian did write a book about it, and I read that as a teenager, and yeah, I thought it was really interesting, especially since it mentioned a lot of place names and even street names that I was really familiar with.
I originally come from Manchester, which is in the north of England, and we grew up in the valleys, so cotton was very important. So everywhere was massive cotton mills. And when I was growing up, they were just closing down. So there was a lot of unemployment, but people lived there and had lived there for generations. So they stayed, but you could see the decline really quickly.
Well, where I grew up learning about my Māori culture, I didn't learn about that at school. I learned about that from my adult family, and it's an oral history traditions that we learned as we grew up. Yeah, very important where we came from, who we are as a people.
Local history. Well, I grew up in Highgate in London, and I suppose there was quite a lot of local history there because it's a very old village. It was still very much a village then. When we first moved there, it even had cobbled streets, so, you know, lovely old buildings.
I come from a very small town, and we always learned about it in school, and my grandparents had grown up in that same town, so I hear a lot of the stories from them too, which is a really different kind of history, so it's really interesting to learn it that way too.
Interestingly, we learned a lot about the Second World War, but now that we live in Berlin, it's very still very alive, the separation of Berlin, and so this history, funnily, is not really, or has not really been taught in school, as far as I remember. So that's a bit strange, or sad at least, because now it's really interesting to get to know so much history of Berlin now that we live there.
One place that I visited, which I found absolutely fascinating and which I'm hoping to go back to quite soon, is Crete. And Crete is absolutely jam-packed full of archaeological sites and remains, which are really fascinating. And I really enjoy actually visiting places like that and establishing connections, I guess, between the present and the past.
Yeah, I visited some Roman ruins in Libya in North Africa, and that was really interesting for me because they were the most intact ruins I've ever seen. You could actually see the shapes of buildings and not just a heap of rocks that, you know, might have been a shop once upon a time. Yeah, and you could still see all the old surfaces like the marble and the sort of bricks underneath, and that was really interesting for me because it made it seem a lot more real.
I think perhaps close to us there's a place called Himmelbjerget, which actually means the sky mountain. It's 148 meters high, and it plays a big role in the history of democracy in Denmark. There were big gatherings of people. Lots of people met there 100 years ago and discussed democracy. and women's rights. So that's a very interesting place I like to visit. Yeah.
Well, I'm an artist, a sculptor, and so visiting Italy for me has been, it's the most wonderful place. I absolutely love it.
I visited Munich, Germany, and that was really interesting. I learned that there's still like thousands of bombs underneath the city that have just been built on top of from World War II, which I thought was absolutely crazy to learn.
Yeah, I was, when I was traveling during that time, Angkor Wat in Cambodia was really present, is a present memory that I have that connected me really physically as well to the past, where I could really perceive how that must have been living in that area, and yeah, that was really impressive.
I spontaneously remember Peru, where I was on Machu Picchu, and that was really interesting to get that feeling in the nature, and that people in the past have been built so impressive monuments there within the nature and with their hands, and that was really impressive for me. Yeah.
This is the beautiful city of Copenhagen in Denmark. The city, situated on the eastern coast of the island of Zealand, is Denmark's biggest city and has been its capital since the beginning of the 15th century. Today, the city is home to over 1 million people, and it's a bustling and cosmopolitan city with stunning palaces and parks, great shops and world-class restaurants. But Copenhagen's origin is as a small fishing village established back in the 10th century by the most famous and feared of Denmark's old inhabitants, the Vikings. The legacy of a great Viking empire that dates back more than 1,000 years can be seen across Europe to this day. But now it's very hard to separate fact from fiction when talking about the Vikings. So many myths, sagas and legends have grown up around the medieval civilization of raiders, traders and intrepid explorers that it's difficult to know which of the stories are actually true. Over 1,000 years after the end of the Viking era, new technology, working in tandem with old skills, is helping us to learn more about this great civilization. And some of the most important work is happening not far from Copenhagen, in the historic town of Roskilde. The town of Roskilde is around 30 kilometers west of Copenhagen, sitting at the head of the Roskilde Fjord. In Viking times, the town was the capital of Denmark and a vital trading centre. There had always been rumours that Viking ships might have been deliberately sunk in the Roskilde Fjord in order to protect the capital from attack from the sea. For years, fishermen and divers had been finding parts that could have come from Viking ships in shallow water at Skuldelev, 20 kilometres from Roskilde. But it wasn't until 1962 that work began to excavate this area of the fjord, and 5 ships emerged from the mud. The ships had probably been at the bottom of the fjord since the 11th century. They were in thousands of pieces, and this left the archaeologists with a massive, intricate jigsaw puzzle that would take them many years to solve. Every piece of timber needed to be carefully recorded and preserved so that the ships could be rebuilt in the museum that had been specially constructed at Roskilde. Today, visitors can see the result of this painstaking work in the museum hall that is now home to the ships known as Skuldelev 1, 2, 3, 5 and 6. The ships range in size and purpose, from a cargo ship used on trading expeditions to a 30-metre ocean-going longship which would have been manned by a crew of 65 to 70 warriors. All these skeletal reconstructions were just the first step in a process that was to reveal an enormous amount about the Vikings. The Viking Ship Museum at Roskilde is more than just a museum. It's also home to a research institution and a working boatyard where they use experimental archaeology to uncover the secrets of the Viking shipbuilders' prowess. The team of archaeologists and shipbuilders at Roskilde take all the information from the remains found at the bottom of the fjord and use it to create exact 1:10 scale models of the ships. These models then provide the template for full-scale reconstructions that are built in the shipyard. Importantly, the entire process of building the replica ships is done using reproductions of tools that would have been used by the Vikings. Finally, the completed replica ships are sailed and tested at sea in all weather conditions. And it is through this process of testing the ships in the water that some of the most valuable information is obtained.
We get a lot of answers on questions we ask when we build it. Things we cannot find out why did they do it like this, and still we do it exactly like they did it, and even though we can't find the answer, but we will find it when we go out sailing with the boat, because it's where it should be, it's where it's built for. And if it's not functioning on the sea, on the big waves, and when you get seasick and all this, then it's maybe because we have reconstructed the ship in the wrong way.
Søren Nielsen is head of the boatyard at Roskilde. He was in charge of the Sea Stallion construction project. The Sea Stallion from Glendalough is the replica ship built from the skeleton of the Sculdalev II longboat. Analysis of its timber had revealed that the ship must have been built in Ireland, probably in the vicinity of Dublin, around the year 1042. Reconstructing the ship took over 3 years. But when it was completed, Søren was on the crew when they sailed the ship from Roskilde back to its original home, Dublin. It was an exhilarating and illuminating trip.
So sailing the ships, it makes you think about the Viking Age. It makes you think about the organization of 60 people on board a ship like this, how to organize these people and how to sail it, how to handle the ship without breaking it. So it gives you a lot of answers on questions, but of course then it gives you a lot of new questions on a lot of things. How did they sail around north of Scotland in the Viking Age with 60 hungry people, warriors? And how did they go to Isle of Man, for example, with 60 ships, not only one ship? We have difficulty today where we have our cell phones and everything. We have a lot of difficulties to actually organize this trip. But think about the Viking Age, where they came hundreds of ships. How did they organize that? Going into the coast at exactly the same time, be ready to fight, have water enough to be ship-shape, and it's some of these questions you just have to ask yourself when you're sailing there.
While the structure of the ship was authentic, the Sea Stallion had added modern GPS to ensure the safety of the 65-strong modern-day crew. The journey took more than 6 weeks, and when they finally arrived in Dublin, emotions were running high.
I would say we were crying mostly, because when we went in, there was, 10,000 people, a lot of people. And Dublin, they think this, now we're coming back with the ship. It belongs to them. And the Sea Stallion, it was just in every Dubliner's heart, I think. they were there. And when we went into the big harbor, the big ships, they started, you know, and people were just, it was a big moment. It was. Not because, I mean, we haven't like crossed the North Atlantic or something like that, but it was just, we felt very, very welcome when we went to Dublin.
In the past few years, another 9 ships have been unearthed at Roskilde, and work is ongoing to preserve and reconstruct these ships. And through this work, we will find out even more about the fascinating Viking civilization and the incredibly skillful shipbuilders that made it all possible.